Greetings, everybody. Dave DeWalt here, the founder and CEO of NightDragon. We're a venture capital platform that helps companies scale. We focus in on the security tech market. And today we have a special, our first of the year, mind you, NightVision event, and we're focused on the state of physical security. Over the past couple of years, I think everybody knows we've been living in a very dangerous world. I call it almost a perfect storm of threats and risks and challenges that have been happening around the world. And I really wanted to use this opportunity in our platform, NightDragon, to talk about the threats, talk about the risks, and really talk about the solutions that are there as well, and opportunities for some of our companies and some of the most influential leaders in the industry to talk about kind of what they're doing to solve some of these physical security threats that are occurring. So start with a little bit of an ominous side. What a world we live in, right? This has been an incredible year, 2024. When you start to look at the statistics behind physical security threats and risks and challenges, it's pretty severe. We saw an active shooter scenario, violence with guns more than once a day, over 488 active shooter situations in 2024. If you look at, some of the other events like wildfires in California, hurricanes in Florida, really affecting mass numbers of people. And when you start to put together all these physical risk challenges, we start to see the collusion of a lot of very dangerous things that are occurring. Add to that assassination attempts, actual assassinations in the case of the United Healthcare CEO, the cyber physical problems that are occurring in the world as well. Coming from the cyberspace myself, originally as CEO, we really now see kind of a convergence of threats and risks in the cyber world to the physical world. Think about ransomware and what can happen around attacks that can affect critical infrastructure on your digital, that could affect kinetic and physical areas as well. Or those wildfires or hurricanes that could affect digital assets and data centers. And we're just seeing this constant kind of challenge. Recent aviation challenges as well really are bringing a lot of interesting and challenging problems, radicalization online, a lot of hate, a lot of anger, a lot of challenges that are really resulting themselves in something we need to do more about, in my opinion. And having served on many, many boards and involved with many companies, this has become a boardroom issue, without a doubt. How to protect our CEO, our named executive officer, how to begin to create enterprise risk management for physical security, not just the people, but the locations, the employees, the customers, the partners throughout whatever element of business that you have. So this is real. This is a big challenge, and I think a big topic for NightDragon to take on here with our NightVision series. If you advance, you'll see this is a big growing market, and NightDragon has made numerous investments into this market. But around the world, we're seeing a lot of growth in the global physical security market itself. Technology is really playing a great impact on that. And of course, you can see AI is beginning to really create opportunities around physical security as well. But if you look at video surveillance, which you'll hear from one of the showcase customers or partners of NightDragons in a minute, you'll see this market is really taking off. Visual defense systems, especially with AI on the edge of the cameras, of the surveillance environment, enabling humans to scale at levels that we had never really seen before. And we're starting to see companies take off. And along with those trends of threats and risks and the global market expanding, you're seeing capital. And you're seeing a lot of it now, as well as you're seeing a very large market segment grow, and the physical space as it intersects to all the other domains as well. I mentioned cyber, but also air, oceans, space, and physical environments as well are all kind of intersecting to create a really big opportunity for companies around the world. If you kind of look at what we're seeing, this is a really interesting market. Much like we've seen in the cyber and digital markets, visibility matters. I always say the number one problem that I've seen when I was CEO of FireEye and Mandiant and McAfee and those companies was the lack of visibility really created opportunities for attackers. And in the world of physical security, it's similar. If you don't have visibility online to really monitor social narratives, social sentiments, understand the risk and dangers to your people and your locations, if you don't have real-time early detection of threats and risks that are occurring all over the world, it doesn't enable you to have fast response either. So you got to have visibility, you have to have early detection, and you have to now use tools that really give you quick responses and quick detection that enable you to reduce risk. And it's really a simple paradigm, as you know. The faster you can respond, the faster you can detect a threat, the lower the risk is going to be. And really, artificial intelligence is beginning to take a major step forward in our abilities to create that visibility, create that detection, and create that response. So a very evolving physical security market with a lot of wonderful companies with a lot of capital behind them and a numerous number of segments that you can see that are there. And of course, you're going to hear from a couple of these, as I mentioned, end-to-end solutions in that visual defense areas, threat detection and response and incident response solutions, cloud-based video surveillance areas, access control systems, and really what I think is really powerful is AI and software coming to our 911 and emergency systems to really enable emergency response to early detections as well. So really interesting market forming and a lot to unpack here as we get into the NightVision event. If you turn to our agenda, we've got just an amazing two components to our NightVision State of Physical Security session today. And it's a great pleasure. The first piece being a panel and the second piece being showcases of companies, kind of quick introductions to a series of leading companies. But I want to start with the introduction of the CISO panel. These are chief security officers in today's physical risk world that are just unbelievable in their leadership. DSKomendat and Tim Roemer are going to be joining me for the CISO panel. So welcome to our CSO portion of the panel, our Chief Security Officer portion. Really looking forward to chatting with my two amazing guests and longtime friends and companions in this world of security. DSKomendat, the former CSO for Boeing, who I'll let him introduce himself in a second, and Tim Roemer, who is the CSO and CEO of GMI and former head of security for Homeland Security of the state of Arizona. Thank you for joining, both of you. Really appreciate it. Great to see you both.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, Dave, why don't we start with you? Maybe just give your bio background a little bit because it's very impressive and I probably wouldn't do it justice. So maybe say your background and then Tim, you too.
Sure. Well, 38 years in the security space, actually a little bit longer than that, 36 of them with the Boeing company, various responsibilities during my time there. The last 15 as Boeing's vice president and chief security officer. So I had global security responsibility for the corporation. And upon retiring in October 2022, started my own firm. It's a risk consultancy. Work with a variety of different clients on a variety of different topical security issues, and also have the opportunity to advise for NightDragon. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to spend some time with Tim today.
Thank you. Thank you for joining, Dave. Appreciate it. And thanks for the jacket. I have trouble putting my suit and ties on these days, so I appreciate you guys dressing up. Tim, over to you. Give me your background if you would.
Thanks, Dave. I've spent the last 20 years in security-related positions. Started off working at CIA. Worked at CIA for 10 years, mostly in analytical roles. I thought I would spend my entire career in counterterrorism, but then cybersecurity became so important when I was working in the White House Situation Room from 2012 to 2014. After being exposed to cybersecurity and moving home to the great state of Arizona to work for Governor Ducey, cybersecurity became a huge part of my focus. I served a wide variety of roles in the state of Arizona. I was the state CISO for 4 years, and then Governor Ducey appointed me to run the Department of Homeland Security and be the CISO. I was honored. I was the only person in the country of all 50 states to be both the director of the Department of Homeland Security for a state as well as being the state CISO. And that's because Governor Ducey and I really agreed that cybersecurity is homeland security, and we prioritize that. So after 18 years in government, seeing all the challenges that are out there, I joined the private sector 2 years ago. And it's been fantastic to kind of focus more on the innovation and solutions to the challenges we face in security, and looking forward to talking more about that today.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Really appreciate your service to for all of us. And Dave, thank you as well. I think we've got over 50 years of combined experience today. And if you throw me in there for 30 years too, we've got a good opportunity to chat. So I want to start out with a little bit of hate to call it the ominous scenario we're in of late. The last year has been very, very challenging. As I said at the beginning, I almost call it this perfect storm of threats and risks that are happening in our world, particularly in America now too, and the elevation of some of the technologies, online presence of social media. Last year, there was 488 active shooters, so more than one a day. Being an active shooter situation. We've got a lot of radicalization that's been occurring in different forms, polarizing America, polarizing the world. We've had a lot of really, really challenging climate-based issues as well, with wildfires, hurricanes that really have affected a tremendous amount of people, not just in this country, but all over the world as well. And then when you start to throw some of the other events and accidents that have occurred, the world of physical threat and physical risk has never been higher. Assassination attempts, actual assassinations, Brian Thompson, et cetera, has really created an atmosphere of risk. And you two gentlemen, have lived this for many years. So maybe Dave, start with you for a second. How do you categorize the threat environment? What do you see? I mean, I just summarized it a little bit, but, help from all your risk consulting and years of background, where are we as we sit here in February 2025?
Yeah, David, you did a great job kind of summarizing what's happened last year or two, and I couldn't agree more. It is a exceptionally dynamic risk environment with all sorts of different things coming at us. And quite honestly, it can feel pretty overwhelming at times unless you can kind of take this and break it down into digestible chunks. And I think you can, even with everything that you mentioned in your intro. There is a lot of stuff going on, but I also think there are a lot of tools and capabilities out there that can help security leaders really kind of create a manageable risk portfolio for them. Not every issue and not every risk that's out there affects everyone. So I think the key right now, especially in an environment like this, is really understanding those risks that pertain to you and your organization, and then what's the strategies necessary to help mitigate those.
Yeah, can't agree more with what you're saying. I want to get into that a little bit more, Dave. Tim, how do you categorize it? You just came off 4 years in that big role. Here we are. You've got a big job too. Like, what's your sense of where we're at right now?
Yeah, Dave, a really good way to phrase this narrative is really, you and I were just talking about the Phoenix Open golf tournament here in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona. People don't understand that's the second biggest sporting event in the United States. That sporting event will bring close to 800,000 people to a golf course over a 4-day period. That in the totality of the circumstance makes it the second largest city in the state of Arizona over those course of those 4 days. Securing that in modern times in an evolving threat landscape, and as Dave mentioned, I love when people talk about it as a risk profile, right? We got to decrease our risk. I'm seeing our biggest risk from my time in my last job and into the private sector. Our risk is not knowing what's happening at the exact moment that it is happening. Time is money is this phrase that we hear often. Time is critical for whether it's a first responders responding to a physical attack, a cybersecurity defender quarantining a virtual digital attack. And I don't want to just phrase it like that because we know cyber has a physical consequence as well. But I see it really as we evolve, we have to start adding more tools to our toolbox. We've got to know what's happening in the exact moment that it's happening. Otherwise, we're really not going to have a chance to defend ourselves, our organizations, or our nation.
Yeah, let's keep talking about that because I think this is now risen to a level of almost every boardroom in in the world, right? There's hardly a audit committee who manages risk, or a risk committee, or a safety and security committee who's not talking about an enterprise risk mitigation strategy around physical events. And in addition, now their named executive officers, CEOs in particular, Dave, you alluded to this a little bit, is like, knowing your situation and knowing what to look for. Talk a little bit about advice now in this new era about tools, techniques, things that we should be doing to get better visibility. And then, as Tim said, faster response once you've had a detection as well.
Yeah, I think the first, and it's really foundational, yet a lot of companies don't do this, is you need to do a risk assessment. You need to take an internal and external view of the risks that are being directed towards your company. And each company has internal risk and external risk. A lot of time, those companies spend a lot of their effort focused on that external risk. And I would say that that's a mistake. But not understanding how your company is perceived, what actions might be underway to undermine your company's credibility, the reputation, cause harm to your employees, damage your product, damage your brand. All of those are important things to know, right? You can only fight what you know. And so having a set of risk assessment tools that allow you, to Tim's point, and I agree with this 100%, that gives you that early warning indication of these are the types of risks in different categories that we're facing. And so let's now build some strategies to proactively deal with those risks. So if we face an action or we face an incident, it's not the first time we've ever considered it. It's not the first time we've talked about what actions are we going to take to help mitigate that risk. You've already done all that up front. Your leadership team, this shouldn't be a surprise to them either. Part of the risk assessment is making company leaders aware of these are the risks we face. Some you accept, some you go mitigate. But that has to be communicated effectively at the C-suite level, because actually they are the risk owners and they have to help determine what is an acceptable risk versus what that they expect some risk mitigation to take place. If you can accomplish that risk assessment and do it in a fashion where you have a good overview of your risk landscape, I think that's the first step in being really effective in dealing with all these things that are in the way. Because I said in the beginning, not every risk applies to you. You need to really understand and deal with the risks that are associated with your organization, your teams, your products, your process.
Dave, following up on that, how often do you recommend risk assessment like this? Is this typically an annual assessment, less than that, kind of, and then do you do penetration tests around that just to keep exercising it? What do you do?
I think the answer is it depends. So let me qualify that it depends. You need to do it on at least an annual basis. And I think the reality is you almost have to do persistent risk assessment on yourself. It's changing so quickly. The threats are changing so quickly that what you looked at in January may have increased or decreased by June. There may be something that you never even looked at in January that's now on the radar screen. And so, again, depends on the company, depends on what you do. But at a minimum annually, I would suggest you need to do that more frequently. And if you've got a capability, something that does some persistent monitoring, where you can almost on a daily basis see how threats and perceptions are changing, that's optimal. And to the extent about penetration testing, I think that is important. I think you need to test yourself, right? A plan always looks great on paper until you try to go execute it, right? So you should periodically, and again, it depends on the frequency that you're comfortable with, go out and choose a scenario and press the go button. If you've built a plan, then run a test. Does the plan respond the way you thought it would? Does it need to be revised? Where are the gaps? Do you have the right tools? You only know these things by testing them. You don't want to find that out in the middle of a crisis, which many companies do, unfortunately. Those companies that are really good in this space are proactive and challenging themselves and making sure that what they believe will happen when they press that go button actually does happen.
Tim, I want to talk a little bit now. You had a very unique role recently with Homeland Security in Arizona, where both the digital cyber aspects and physical aspects were kind of coming together, and the convergence of physical threats manifesting in the cyber universe manifesting in the physical universe. You started to see that. Maybe talk a little bit about what you see there, and then maybe what tools and recommendations you have for that, because we still don't see a lot of organizations with that combined role yet. But do you see that coming forward as you go into the future?
I do. I think we were a good example. I know I'm biased. Really, Governor Ducey's leadership was the good example. But the power of a quick story here, when I first came into that role, our adjutant general, so leading the Arizona National Guard, and I had this really productive conversation. And to Dave's point, it was at a tabletop exercise, which you've got to do. You can't just have a playbook. If you've never practiced the plays, you're not going to, get into the game and be able to execute. And that's what you have to do in this industry. But our adjutant general really talked with me about, okay, where would you need me in this scenario physically? And I said, when cyber and physical converge is, think about it, consumer response in public panic. We'll take a cybersecurity emergency, downed internet, down credit cards. Let's say a bank goes down for a little bit. One bank you can't get money out or access. Everybody panics, tries to pull money out of all the banks. One gas station goes down, one pipeline goes down, everybody panics, tries to go out. We don't have enough gas in any city for everybody to get gas at the same time. There's not enough money in all the banks for everybody to get their money out at the same time. The National Guard and I had this conversation where we really, aligned here, which is that kinetic physical response will be that National Guard has to go in to calm rioting, looting, unrest, and things like that, all because of, and I will call it, cyber terrorism. It is. These cyber attacks are terrorism. The tools you need have to be so innovative that you know what's happening instantly. Using, multimodal across all aspects of pictures, video, text, all that is so imperative. I'll tell you, I talked with a fire chief of one of our largest cities in Arizona lately, and he was telling me that most of the time, what they're seeing in public safety is somebody posts a video online, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, something like that, or to X. And that's the first aspect that they know before they call 911. And it's really sad to think that's how our society is. But if our first responders have a way with innovative tools to be able to find a wildfire, up in North Scottsdale in the desert, a shooting, somewhere else, that knowledge and that response is going to be imperative in saving lives.
Yeah, talk a little bit more. I want to end it on this too, just because, I don't want to just talk about the threats and the risks so much as the future could be very bright here, brought on by artificial intelligence. I talk about A to I is my little way to say it. It's like, how do we use artificial intelligence to create actionable insights, actionable intelligence, right? You just alluded to that, Tim. The opportunity now to use these tools to look at social media posts or something and turn it from AI and machine learning to really an actionable intelligence that can create a response. And these tools are beginning to occur, and AI seems to be creating that. Maybe talk, Dave, start with you. Like, what do you see tools out there, techniques out there, and any recommendations that you see from your vantage point?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the security community is beginning to adopt and embrace AI because it's a business enabler, in all honesty. For every risk that AI creates, there's a business benefit of having it too. And that applies in the security field also. When you think of large corporations and the number of cameras that they have and the number of alarm points, all the people that are accessed into their facilities, that is a significant amount of information coming in every day. And it requires significant resources in many cases to manage those systems and to try to gather trends and data. AI can do that in such a more efficient way and allow you to quickly see where you have risk, how to mitigate that risk, and free up people to do more meaningful work statements. The artificial intelligence that is applicable at cameras now, what is normal or what's not normal, and its instantaneous ability to recognize that. And not only recognize it, but then create a response that's appropriate for that particular situation and automatically send it. That happens within seconds versus in prior time, where you'd have someone watching a bank of cameras, hopefully see that instant as it happened on the camera, then have to draw a response out of it, and then figure out what to do. That is a super inefficient way, and really, quite frankly, impossible when you look at the number of cameras that many of these facilities have. And the same holds true with your access management system. If somebody's tailgated in, if credentials being used erroneously, the power of AI and the ability of security folks to start thinking differently, and I think that's the key, Dave, is I think many security people are still not comfortable in the cyber environment. And so if they're not comfortable, I think it's imperative that they onboard people on their team who think this way, who are comfortable with AI, who are comfortable with technology, and make them key parts of their teams, because that's what's going to enable that physical security to be greatly enhanced by the use of AI.
Great advice, Dave. Really appreciate that. I love the addition of get smart in AI and autonomy, because as a physical security expert, the digital world really can help you. Tim, what's your view on this? Bring us home. What do you see the future being and ways to defend against these threats that we're seeing?
Yeah, what I've seen throughout my career, and it's even more powerful now, is that intelligence doesn't have to be classified to be powerful and effective. So open source intelligence is extremely powerful, but there's so much of it out there in the world now because everything that's being posted. You have to utilize artificial intelligence, or let's call it assisted intelligence, automated intelligence. You can change the, first word of the A, and it really highlights how a security operations center would utilize it. I know, like, when people come into our security operations center at our MSSP, they're always asking, why is there just so much news and open source intelligence and all these feeds? What are we paying you guys for? And I said, that's exactly what it is, because we are paying attention to everything going on in the world to better protect you. And when I was at CIA and working in the intelligence community in the White House, we saw the creation of the open source center. We saw the evolution that we know now in today's day and age with all the data that's out there. If you can't comprehend it, if you can't make it actionable, then you're really behind the eight ball. But for those who can, the day and age where you need to go out in the world of espionage and classified intelligence, that's all great, but you don't need to be CIA and NSA to protect your organization. You don't need classified information to do it. You need a good, innovative AI tool that will automate more for you, for your human beings. You don't have to have 800 people in a SOC. You could have 8. But the tools are assisting you in most of that, watching everything that's going on in the world, and putting you and your C-suite and your leaders in an advantageous position to make really good decisions quickly, whether it's to protect your financial investments, to protect your clients, or respond in a safety security environment. But you gotta know now.
By the way, thank you and well said there, Tim and Dave. Really appreciate you both joining. I'm a big believer in what the tools of the future hold, and the future's now. We see that all the things you just described, many companies now, in particular some of NightDragon's portfolio, can really handle this at scale. Millions of open source feeds in the large language models, creating visibility of events in locations and people near you, but then creating agentic AI playbooks. A word that we're going to hear over and over, agentic AI. How do we create autonomy to playbooks and response from the threat intelligence that we receive to automate that? So if you're only 8 people in a SOC versus 800 people in a SOC, you can still leverage autonomy to help you with that playbook, help you with that response. And Dave said it really well. Now visual defense systems are so much smarter on the edge with AI. You start to put together visibility, detection, fast response, we can stay ahead of these threats, and we can do it together. Great advice from 2 unbelievable experts in the field. Dave and Tim, thank you so much for joining our NightVision event, and great to see you both again. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Dave.
Thank you. So let's jump over to our first showcase portfolio company. This is a gentleman who has got many, many years of experience in emergency response of physical events. The company is called RapidSOS. RapidSOS is the leader in 911 software that helps enable first responders and corporations, especially corporations as well, respond to 9/11 events, 911 events. And I'd love to introduce Michael Martin, founder and CEO of RapidSOS. Over to you, Michael.
Well, thank you, Dave, and really appreciate NightDragon and everyone in kind of this broader network for being a part of this journey with RapidSOS. It's been amazing to see all the different collaborations we've been having across the broader NightDragon ecosystem and this ecosystem around safety, security, emergency response, both physical and cyber. So RapidSOS is Dave alluded to. So we're an emergency response AI platform. Today, we integrate mission critical data from about 200 tech companies. It's integrated with about 5.3 billion devices, and then that data streams into 21,000 state, local, and federal governments across 8 countries today, managing about 174 million emergencies a year. So we've helped support about 600 million emergencies since we launched in 2018. So I'd love to talk today, spend a few minutes about how we think about kind of that safety, security use case, emergency response use case, as we think about that large, sophisticated enterprise security operations. So with that, I thought we could start with just kind of a little bit of like the challenge today that exists between typically, the global security operations centers, these very sophisticated enterprise security operations centers that we're all running, and then the realities that our public safety agencies are facing. And we'll look at a couple case studies of how that plays out, and then we'll look at how can we use AI to bridge that gap, to give you full visibility and awareness of every single emergency that's going on inside your facilities and affecting your teams, your executives, et cetera. And how can we ensure interoperable both data and comms between your teams and the local first responders on scene. So I think the first thing, though, just to kind of set the stage here, right, is I think one of the challenges we observe today is the enterprise often has this highly sophisticated security stack, right? You may have, some sort of GSOC apparatus, you have cameras, surveillance systems, security, alarming, AED protocols, all this sort of stuff. And that system works probably incredibly well when you capture the incident. But the challenge that we observe is that for most of your employees, your customers, visitors, consultants, et cetera, that are on site, when there is some sort of emergency, a medical incident, or God forbid, some sort of active shooter incident or something like that, so often, right, they're reaching for their muscle memory, which is basically get out their personal phone and dial 911. And so the result is there's this silo between that employee on their, BYOD sort of setup and then your sophisticated enterprise operations center. And we were working with one Fortune 10 company to kind of study this, and what we observed is they actually went deep on this, and they did a detailed study with a large law enforcement agency where they looked at all the incident rates at their footprint inside that agency's jurisdiction. And what they found was actually their security apparatus was only capturing about 2.5% of the emergencies that were occurring inside their physical footprint. So the 97.5%, like what was that? What was stuff that was being called into 911 from customers, even employees, sometimes consultants, right? Where they had all these cameras, they had all these alarms and sophisticated response, and they just weren't able to help in those incidents because, again, they didn't even know about it, right? And so we see all this spend, but we see that silo that exists from our devices and our public safety agencies and our sophisticated enterprise operations centers. So I wanted to go into a case study, and this is fresh on our minds here as we just passed the 2-year anniversary of the East Palestine derailment. So I wanted to just walk through, like, how does that silo impact response, and how should we think about that impact across, both at the C-suite and at the board level as we think about safety, security, emergency response. So it was February 3rd, 2023, so just over 2 years ago, basically, when that train derailed in East Palestine, Ohio. So East Palestine has a volunteer fire department. 90% of all fire response in the United States is volunteers. And so these folks are at home with their families, and basically they get this notification. So this is exactly that notification that came in on their phones to basically say there's a train on fire near Alice. Alice and Taggart was the cross street. McKinn's was the local wine store. So with that information, they say goodbye to their families, get in their pickup trucks, drive to the firehouse, get the rig, and then they arrive on scene. And as I mentioned, RapidSOS, we're supporting powering 21,000 state and local governments. We cover 99.7% of the United States now. Emergency response is managed through our AI platform. So we have, a variety of insights into this incident. So this is actually a photo that's taken as the first units arrive on scene here. And the heat was so intense that actually, folks, these firefighters made entry through these buildings here. So I'll show you, well, we can show separately kind of some of the video that comes through on those situations. But ultimately, right, like those firefighters, like, they had no idea what they were walking into, right? Like literally all they knew was a train on fire near Alice, and they walked into one of the most challenging hazmat incidents in the past 50 years in the state of Ohio. And so meanwhile, at the Class 1 Rail Operations Center, right, they have all this data. They have specialty hazmat expertise. They know exactly how to handle this incident, but there is this communication gap between what they know and what they can get into the hands of those first responders. Because again, our public safety agencies today, they are working on an analog calling framework that was built in the 1960s. So ultimately, what happens is those experts, those hazmat teams from that rail company have to get flown on site and work with first responders in a process that takes several days to figure out the action plan. And so that ends up being a controlled detonation, as we know, that is a couple days after the original derailment. At that point in time, pressure and heat had built up in a manner that was really the only option. And you end up having a $12 billion hit in the market cap of that company. You have $1.7 billion in cleanup costs, and significant pressure on the executive teams as they get called before Congress in various oversight committees. And generally, the whole industry now is facing additional regulation because it all came down to, in those critical moments of that response, there was just no ability to bridge that gap. And this plays out in all sorts of ways. The other way this plays out is when you see mass incidents occurring around us. So let's talk quickly, actually, at a case study of the tragedy that occurred in New York with Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare. So RapidSOS, we supported the 911 traffic around that. So 6:44 a.m., Mr. Thompson was shot twice outside the Hilton Hotel in Midtown New York. 6:46 a.m., the first 911 calls come in, and just an extraordinary response from NYPD. They were on scene 2 minutes later. And one of the parts of this challenge that is less talked about is actually like the EMS process of managing these incidents. So EMS arrives a few minutes later and they start treating and triaging Mr. Thompson. But this is the CEO of the largest health insurance company in America. And when EMS arrives, they don't even know his name. So like that gap that occurs between what we know in the enterprise and what our first responders know. So ultimately, over a 28-minute process, EMS is trying to triage, right? They're trying to treat and care for Mr. Thompson. They're trying to figure out blood types and all these sorts of things. And tragically, as we know, Mr. Thompson is pronounced dead at 7:12 a.m. in a Mount Sinai West Hospital. And so this is just a micro example of that gap that exists between what we know and what we're able to share with first responders. We also see this, in our enterprises. Anytime there's some sort of large attack, often that first notice of the incident occurs around by actual, from 911 traffic. So in the New Year's Day 911 attack that occurred, the New Year's Day attack that occurred on the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, we immediately saw that incident. We see this in the Bourbon Street attack that occurred a few hours earlier. We also see that certainly in the LA wildfire. So not only the major spike, in this case spiking 600%, all of LA 911 traffic, but you can also hone in on exactly where that incident is occurring. Another recent example was the Vistra battery plant fire that occurred in Moss Landing in California, south of the Bay Area. Once again, right, we see these immediate detections of these major incidents coming in from our public safety agencies. So as we think about this, also the Philadelphia plane crash as well. So we think about a suite of solutions to try to tackle that gap. So the first one is notification. Just how can we inform our enterprise security response team that there is an incident occurring on campus right now, right? We don't want that notification to be when the ambulance shows at your front gate. How can we get you out ahead of that, basically? And then how do we get you connecting and coordinating with your local public safety agencies? So RapidSOS's our AI platform can stream in bidirectional communications between your GSOC or your security apparatus. So obviously voice, text, messaging, but also video feeds, building blueprints, hazmat information, all that pops directly on the screen of those first responders. Again, we're doing this about 550,000 times a day for major companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, etc. And then how do we plug that into, extend that reach into video as well? We just released last year video into 911 streaming is part of Apple's emergency SOS service as an example. So now 911 centers can opt in to requesting a 911 caller to share video from their smartphone. And similarly, now we can allow enterprises to pass live video feed coming through. We're doing that in a number of large Fortune 500 companies today. And then finally, just kind of reminded of this new reality that we live in where execs are being targeted. This is just fairly unprecedented, right? And so, let's make sure, anytime one of your execs is having a medical emergency, that ambulance immediately knows all that pre-existing health information, all the treatment and care information they need. And then secondly, let's make sure that your team knows so you can assist in the response. So we have a suite of solutions there, again, of closing that gap. Anytime like that exec needs to access emergency services, streaming more content through and coordinating response with your exec team. So out doing this today, I mentioned at a fair amount of scale, just a couple of case studies here. One on supporting Amazon's Global Security Operations Center on a bunch of stuff as they protect their employee base. OXXO, the largest convenience store chain across Latin America. I think it's 22,000 locations we're supporting today. And one of the powerful things, right, is when you close this gap is how you can shrink response times. So it used to be there would be holdups in OXXO stores, and the police response was not fast enough to actually intervene in the incident. But now, because we're supporting their panic buttons, it goes directly on the screen of local law enforcement, including the nearest police cars. And then also we can provide the camera feed through. You get this immediate prioritized response directly from that local law enforcement agency. And we've seen some powerful examples of lives saved, crime stopped in progress as a result. So just a little bit of a deeper dive here on how this works. So in GSOCs now, you can have visibility of kind of all those emergencies that are occurring on site. You can get a variety of insights. Hey, is this an employee, an executive calling? Like, what does that look like? We can obviously extend the reach across, all the devices that are inside your facility, give you visibility of how that's occurring. We can also do mass incident detection, major incidents, things like that. And then obviously this can all plug into your existing workflow and work streams, right? Whether that's some sort of operational software, whether that's Slack, text messages, email notifications, MS Teams, etc. So a little bit kind of some of that snapshot. We've been fortunate to kind of work on applying this use case with a number of veteran CSOs as we think through that. So a little bit of kind of how all this comes together. So thank you again to the NightDragon team for giving us the chance to to build this in partnership with them and all of their CSO advisors and CISO advisors, and quite excited about bridging that gap between all the sophistication that you all have in the enterprise, our consumer devices, and obviously every first responder that is out running into these emergencies. So my name again, Michael Martin, email address mmartin, MMARTIN @rapidsos.com. Would love to double click with how you're thinking through this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael Martin, for that amazing introduction to RapidSOS. Let's go on to our second showcase partner here as well. This is a company called Dataminr, and we have the Chief Security Officer of Dataminr here, Rob Crowley, to talk a lot about cyber and physical early detection of threats and events that are occurring in the world. Over to you, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. My name is Rob Crowley. I'm the Chief Security Officer at Dataminr. For those who are not too familiar with Dataminr, we're an AI company founded in 2009 and headquartered out of New York. We're the world's leader in real-time event and threat detection across both the physical world and the digital world. So what does this mean? 24/7, 365, we're detecting events by discovering information from within the public domain. And we're then informing organizations across the public sector and the private sector that need to know that these events are happening straight away. We support hundreds of private sector organizations in the corporate security realm and cybersecurity realm, including 2/3 the Fortune 50 and half the Fortune 100. And we also support over 200 government and non-government organizations, including the United Nations, who relies upon us in over 100 countries. So I thought I was going to start today by looking at some of the top challenges we hear about from chief security officers around the world. And last year, we polled our corporate security clients and said, what are your top 3 concerns and challenges? And the expanding remit of these teams came through loud and clear. So historically, CSOs and their teams have focused on protecting people and facilities. And kind of 3 areas related to those themes came out in our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th position on our poll. So expanding duty of care is a concern, particularly challenges around protecting employees working in hybrid and remote roles. Corporate travel security is a concern, with travel security now reaching pre-pandemic levels and more people traveling in higher numbers to things such as corporate offsites. And then executive threats, as ever, remains a challenge for CSOs and their teams. And anecdotally, that is higher for CEOs and corporate leaders making discussions around social and political issues. But interestingly, the greatest challenge we hear about right now is around operational resilience as well as supply chain resilience, really reinforcing the shifting nature of what corporate security, what physical security leaders are being asked to focus on. This, we believe, is coming, and which kind of leads us on to our second challenge. This is coming from changing business expectations, which is kind of both a challenge but an opportunity for corporate security leaders. So what we're hearing is that business leaders actively want, and now in many cases expect, their CSO and their team to detect, respond, and help the company recover from a revenue impacting event as quickly as possible, as much so as to protecting their employees and their facilities. And we believe this is because of 3 main factors. One, the world has just never been so connected. So a small event somewhere in the world can have a much greater secondary and tertiary impact on a company than in years gone by. Secondly, there's this greater increased surface area with employees working in a larger number of locations than ever before. And we are living in 2025 in an era of heightened uncertainty. The final challenge we hear about most frequently really comes to collaboration and governance. So CSOs and their teams, who are now playing a more strategically valuable role inside their organizations, helping to detect these events and threats and helping the company respond to them as quickly as possible. One of the challenges they have is, how do they do this at scale? How do they detect these events and then collaborate with cross-functional leaders across a company in the most efficient ways? The kicker to all of this is the volume and frequency of these business impacting events has never been greater. And that's something we hear a lot of from CSOs as a major, major challenge. But fortunately, we are living in a time where new SaaS platforms, new technology, and in particular AI can really help with this challenge. Bringing on to Dataminr. So what we do at Dataminr is we built purpose-built AI models explicitly for the challenges of corporate security teams and their leaders around employee safety, facility protection, and operational resilience. We use predictive AI to detect events as quickly as possible by looking at patterns within public data that indicate that a breaking event is taking place. And then we use generative AI to immediately describe the events that we're detecting. And we're doing this at massive scale, far surpassing any other company in the world, providing hyper-local real-time situational awareness to companies that have over 700,000 facilities collectively inside their portfolios in over 190 different countries. We take in vast amounts of data to do this by combining AI and public data. So on the left-hand side of the screen are all the different types of data that we ingest and from different sources. We then use proprietary AI models, which is the middle of the screen, to look at text, image, video, sound, and sensor data. We then synthesize and bring this data together in real time, fusing it together to get an understanding of what is happening, and then use generative AI to describe what is taking place. So Dataminr pioneered this technique known as multimodal fusion AI for looking at text, image, video, sound, and sensor data, all these little fragments that are in the public domain that help organizations immediately know that something is happening. So if we just double click into computer vision, if I just take this one image that may have been posted on a social media platform, to me, this looks like there could be a fire taking place at a McDonald's restaurant. To our AI platform, that understands that is what fire looks like, that is what smoke looks like. And it can even see things that are hard to see with the naked eye, such as a website on the back of that fire truck. And when an event such as this takes place, what Dataminr is doing is looking for all the fragments of data that indicate an event is occurring, and then immediately describing that event and sharing that event with people that need to know across the public sector and the private sector. So if we take a large
Engine 54 outdoor fire at the intersection of Patata Street, across from Atlantic Avenue.
So what you just heard there, and hopefully that came through, is an audio scanner. So if we take a larger event such as the recent LA wildfires, Dataminr's platform is depicting and describing textual descriptions that we're finding about the events, but also looking at video, sound, and imagery to help people have a holistic understanding of what is happening with those events, where is the fire spreading to, and how could they be impacting both employee safety of organizations working in those areas, but also the continuity of the operations of companies that have businesses running in those locations. It's not just the biggest natural hazard events or man-made events that we're looking for. So here's a real-world example from one of our customers, a biotechnology company. We detected a power outage a couple of miles away from one of their facilities. Their corporate security department received our alert, informed leaders inside their organization that businesses were losing power nearby. That organization then made some decisions in real time on what they would need to do if they lost power. They then did lose power, but the decisions had already been made, and they managed to move their refrigerated medical supplies outside of this facility, saving them millions of dollars. So that's an example where a corporate security department is adding more strategic value to their organization by using real-time data and sharing it with business leaders to take actionable outcomes. A couple more examples. Something like an active shooter event. Again, time is of the essence. And in this example, from a hotel in Midtown Atlanta, Dataminr is detecting this event over 2 hours before a shelter in place was implemented by the police. And then through our new Regen AI technology, synthesizing the information of what is known about this event and regenerating a living description of this event for CSOs and their teams, who can have that information on their phone at all times to know the very latest information about the event. Doing similar things in the physical world and with physical cyber events. Let me see if I can play this video for you. There we go. So here is the CrowdStrike outage from July, and Dataminr is alerting customers of this outage, which had physical real-world implications, obviously, and cyber implications, nearly 90 minutes before it's in the mainstream news, and using our new regenerative AI technology, being able to formulate and reformulate a living description of how this event played out as it spread from Australia around the world. And the first indications that our platform picked up on this event was from social media platforms. And we're looking at text, image, video, and sound to describe what is happening all in real time. So just to end, I'm going to go back to the slide. Here we go. So in terms of kind of the value we provide, strategic and operational value to corporate security teams, giving them first mover advantage on events impacting locations they operate in, or specific events impacting their brand or their executives or their identity as a company, helping them be the first to act and facilitate the response of the company to that event, and then also being the first to brief executives in the company that an event has happened, and this is what the security team has already done to protect employees, facilities, and the operations of the company. So hopefully that gives you a brief insight into what Dataminr is doing 24/7, 365 for companies around the world. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rob, very much for your insights into Dataminr, a leading company using AI to help create early detection of threats and events in the world. So let's go on to our third and final showcase portfolio company. And we have an amazing company called Rhombus Technologies. And we have the co-founder and CEO, Garrett Larsson, here to talk about new visual defense and video surveillance systems using AI. Over to you, Garrett. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Dave, for that kind intro, and I'm excited to be here today and share a little bit more about what Rhombus does and what we're seeing in the market. First of all, for those of you that don't know, Rhombus is a cloud physical security provider. So what does that mean? Well, for the easiest way I always like to describe it is for those of you that have Nest at home or Ring at home, we do that, those kind of cloud security cameras, alarm systems, all of that. But we do it for large organizations. So that might be schools, it might be gyms, warehouses, data centers, all of those physical security needs that you need for a large organization with lots of locations. Today, we offer cloud security cameras that don't require any additional hardware like hard drives or NVRs. We have sensors to go with that. So that might be anything from door sensors to environmental sensors. We have alarm monitoring so that when something does happen, we can dispatch police or emergency resources right away. And our newest product is access control, so folks can securely badge into an organization, and then the organization can have a full audit history of everything that's been going on. We have over 3,000 customers today that spans a wide variety of organizations. So we get a lot of data on just different use cases and different things that are going on among our customers. The different customers we have span anywhere from tech companies to healthcare companies, all the way to government entities, whether that's schools, K through 12, to local cities, states, anything like that. So it's really across a wide variety of use cases. And the interesting trends we see going on the security side is obviously in this day and age, there's been heightened crime. So from a lot of our customers, they want to know exactly when an incident might be going on. Kind of the base case scenario you see, especially kind of in small commercial instances, would be like homeless people trying to break in or petty crime. We do a lot in the self-storage industry, so there's a lot of crime in those areas. And the challenge is that human labor is very expensive today. So we provide them with AI solutions and automation to help automate that process so they don't need on-site security guards all the time. They can really reduce the labor costs in order to make their operations more efficient, but also get the security that they need and that they demand. For a lot of times, what they're doing is automating facilities. Other types of things that we see, obviously schools is a big area of concern these days. And you can imagine how AI is really important in these areas where you can do things such as, look for people that are people of interest that shouldn't be on the school campuses, so that you can immediately notify the on-site resource officer to help deal with that situation. You can also think of things with license plates. And if there's maybe a known license plate with a known criminal or someone with a background that should be attended to right away, or that should be looked into right away, we can do automated test or automated dispatch in those scenarios. There's also like more, I would call it on the edge AI technologies. We partner with companies that try to do gun detection, and you can imagine that's a big one in a lot of different scenarios where if you can detect that much earlier, it's something that is very important. And then what's really exciting about these technologies is the ability to integrate into these partners, as I mentioned, like in that gun detection one, or I know RapidSOS is on here, being able to automatically link our systems with theirs such that we can automatically dispatch to them so that they can dispatch emergency resources, and those emergency resources can get better situational awareness through our on-site resources. And that's another big trend that we see, is that customers want to link best of breed solutions such that they can get insight from us and then link that to, say, someone like RapidSOS or the best gun detection platform, and have all these systems working in concert such that they can get the best physical security protection that they can get across all of these. And then obviously security is is a huge trend, but another huge area that we see with our customers is just the ability to get operational insights into all of their facilities. And that's another big thing that customers are asking a lot more about, especially with all the generative AI improvements or rollouts that have been going out lately. And customers just want to know more about their premises. Yes, security is highly important, but can you tell me how much this piece of gym equipment was being used? Or can you tell me how many vehicles went through today? So there's all these ways that AI is reshaping this industry, such that the days of just having kind of dumb cameras monitor the facilities and then it's kind of almost for insurance purposes, that's going away very quickly. And now they're becoming these proactive security tools such that they can proactively notify you of incidences. And furthermore, they can also give you areas of improvement for your organization so that you can help get more ROI from these systems beyond just security. And that's that's an exciting area as well. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a taste of Rhombus, and happy to answer any questions that anyone might have at a future date.
Okay, thank you everybody for attending our NightVision event, our first of 2025 on the state of physical security. Just want to say thank you to our guests, our chief security officers, as well as the CEOs who came in and talked about their companies and how they're using AI. As you could tell from today's NightVision event, detection matters, visibility matters, fast response matters, all to reduce risk. And these companies are really bringing next generation technologies to help solve the physical threats and risks that are occurring. I'd like to say thank you, but also point out that we have the State of Physical Security white paper that we produced, our whole report that's online as well. You'll be able to see both on our website at NightDragon.com as well as our LinkedIn pages. So take a look at that report. And thank you to all the advisors who helped us create that report. Hope everybody has a wonderful 2025. Thank you for joining today.